It is Saturday morning. It's 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And if you haven't been able to figure it out by looking at me, we're going to be talking about music today. So put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation because it is time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. Yes, it is time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. I am Steve. And if you're joining us today, make sure that you say hello in the chat. Make sure that you participate in the conversation. I see that we already got people tuning in here today. Corey Ann, good morning. Kim Baker, good beyowning or afternoon. Happy Catterday. Shaland is here. Jay Zetterval is here. It's time for Coffee Breaks with Steve, the musical. Yeah, we're going to be talking music today, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on preamble stuff because we've got a great conversation today that I want to get to right away. I'll tell you about that in a minute. I am going to share a little bit about special days, but even that's going to be brief this morning because we've got a good conversation. So just to let you know, the special days, I'm just going to focus on birthdays today that are coming up this week. And we've got tomorrow, the 19th, Rosemary Harden. Rosemary is a dear friend and has been on Coffee Breaks. You may recall that she was on last year, several months ago, talk about reunions, high school reunions. Elena Platt is celebrating a birthday tomorrow as well. So happy birthday, Elena. Dee Dee Kiso, our friend Dee Dee, who was just on here very recently and talked just last week, came on and spoke with us, is celebrating a birthday on the 20th. So happy birthday, Dee Dee. And Alan McCormick, my dear brother-in-law, is celebrating a birthday this coming week as well. So happy birthday to Alan. And do want to mention that if you have a special day coming up this week, let us know in the chat so that we can celebrate with you. And if you have a special day coming up in the next month, the remainder of the little bit of February that we have left, or in the month of March, let us know that as well so that we can make sure that we're ready to celebrate with you. I see Jim Mockford's on here. Good morning, Jim. Good morning. Did I say hi to Carla yet? And Rick, good morning to everyone. And again, continue to speak up in the chat as we go along today so that we can make you part of the conversation. I'm going to get right to the topic today and right to our talk. My guest today, Izze Stein, is actually on the road. She's traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast on the West Coast. She may actually be able to tune in, but we had concerns. We were setting this up about her availability, traveling, you know how that can be sometimes. You're in a hotel room or someplace unfamiliar. Needed that. Someplace unfamiliar, and we were just a little bit concerned about whether we'd get a good connection this morning. And so she and I had a conversation a few days ago, and we really got to talking, and it took a little bit longer than normal, which is why I want to get right to it. Before I do want to tell you a little bit, and again, Izzy may be able to tune in. She may end up on the chat here and be able to participate in the conversation. If she is, that is fantastic. But I want to tell you just a little bit about her before we go to the conversation she and I had. Izzy is a multi-genre singer. What does that mean? It means she sings all kinds of music. She's living and working in New York City. She performs regularly at Birdland, Fine and Rare, the Flatiron Room, Prohibition, and the Art House Hotel. She's made appearances as well at the Apollo, New Blue, Smalls, the Duplex, Mesro, the Green Room 42, and 54 Below. In addition to live performances, Izzy does vocal contracting work. She is the singer for Let Me Write Your Song, a company created by composer Scott Allen that produces one-of-a-kind songs for special occasions. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end. Izzy's currently working on production for her first concept album of original music, which premiered as a live performance this past November 29th at Rockwood Music Hall. Her goal in life, and I love this, is to use her voice to connect the world and open as many hearts as possible. So now let's go to the conversation that I had with Izzy. And by the way, you can still participate in the chat and make your comments and ask your questions. If Izzy isn't able to tune in this morning, she's going to be able to come back in here later and she'll see your comments and be able to respond to them. Here's Izze Stein. Well, Izzy, thank you so much for being here on Coffee Breaks with Steve. Welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Great to see you virtually. Excellent.
Virtually. And, we did have a chance to meet a few months ago in New York. Izzy performing at Birdland for Jim Caruso's cast party. And it was it intrigued me and you really drew me in. You were the first one on stage that night. And I was immediately captivated by your voice and your stage presence. So I just wanted to say thank you for a great performance and a great introduction to our time at Birdland on that night.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so happy you came. Cast Party is such an amazing event that happens at Birdland, and I'm there most Mondays. So, and that was the one Monday that I went first. So, because you never know the order beforehand. You just kind of go whenever Jim calls you.
Jim calls you.
That was, yeah. But I'm so happy I met you too, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you. Well, I think it's interesting because you build yourself as a multi-genre singer, and I'm always curious with people who have a musical talent. What's your background? I mean, where did this come from? Did you come from a musical family? Did you grow up singing? How did that all come about?
So, I first started dancing when I was 3 years old. I mean, my parents are both artistic. My mom worked in the fashion industry when my parents both lived in New York before I was born, until they moved to New Jersey. So my mom worked in fashion. My dad actually was a cartoonist before he became a lawyer. And my dad also plays piano by ear. My mom played the flute. Like, they had artistic backgrounds, but no one really did music in my family. So I started dancing. And then I started taking voice lessons, and then I went to theater camp. And it was honestly when I was at theater camp that my family and I kind of saw that this might be something that I would want to do with my life, that this being performing. So I kind of went on like a musical theater track for many years. Mm-hmm. I did all the shows in high school. I did the Paper Mill Playhouse show choir, which was so fun in New Jersey. And I did young arts. I did all of these kind of, but I also, alongside doing theater, I also was in choirs and I took piano lessons and I performed like one-off kind of pop jazz songs along the way. But I never saw that as like the main thing. The main thing was always theater. Then I auditioned for schools and I ended up getting into University of Michigan for musical theater, which was so unexpected and crazy. And I actually decided to go to Michigan over Harvard, which was also crazy that I ended up getting into Harvard. But it was like I was so committed to doing art and studying, theater. So I studied musical theater at Michigan. I graduated. I moved to New York. And 9 months later, Broadway closed. And it was really, I was auditioning every day. And at that time, there were a lot of open calls. So like I would be like getting up at 6 a.m., mm-hmm. waiting online outside in the freezing cold during audition season, January through March, and, waiting to be seen, and then going to my waiter job at night, my server job. Like I was total like traditional actor experience, Broadway actor experience. Then when everything closed, I kind of regrouped and there was nothing happening, but I really wanted to perform. So there was this hotel that had a piano in the lobby close to me called the Art House Hotel. I walked in and I said, hey, would you guys like a singer for the lobby? And they said yes, which was also shocking. I mean, like for me, whenever people say yes, because this path includes so many no's, whenever I get a yes, it is always shocking. Like even if like people say, oh, it makes sense. It's like, no, there are no guarantees. But I started singing at the Art House and I had a pianist with me and we did mainly Broadway and some jazz stuff. And then at the beginning of 2022, I kind of was like, maybe I should lean into this gig singing and try to sing at more places and sing more different types of music. And so I put that intention out and then I started booking all these different gigs all over the city. And so much so that in the summer of 2022, I was performing like 4 to 5 times a week, at all different venues, doing all different types of music, because I've never really discriminated. I mean, I listen to everything from like 60s, 70s Laurel Canyon to like 90s, thousands R&B. I love like Michael Jackson pop. I love contemporary neo soul. I love jazz, obviously.
Yeah.
And I'll always, and I, you know what, recently I've kind of been listening to country and been like, I
Okay.
really need to do a deep dive into country because there's a lot of beautiful storytelling there. But in the summer of 2022, I was doing like a 60s, 70s, like kind of hippie show at Prohibition where I had a full band, you know, piano, bass, drums, guitar, and I sang like kind of rock pop songs. I was doing jazz at Birdland and jazz at this place Fine and Rare with my trio, an upright bassist and a piano player. I mean, I was going to open mics. I was doing shows where I just played piano and sang, and it was kind of like a big adventure. And yeah, and then in the fall, I started also doing private events, which was really fun. And I'm still doing those. And then yeah, in the fall, I kind of was like, I'm doing a lot, so I pared it down to kind of my favorite ones. And one of my favorite venues is Birdland. I'm there every Monday that I can, because that show is just amazing. It's a different show every Monday. I get to do a different song. I mean, this month was really fun because it was Jim Caruso's birthday at the beginning of February, and then the week after was Billy Stritch's birthday. So for Jim's birthday, I asked him who his favorite writers were, and he said Cy Coleman and Johnny Mercer. So then I chose a Cy Coleman song.
Wow.
And that was actually like the first musical theater song I did at Birdland, which was What You Don't Know About Women from City of Angels. Great song. And
that is a great song. And you still get that jazzy style from City of Angels.
Yes.
I mean, that's got some great,
God.
you know, that 40s style big band and jazz in that musical is fantastic. That's a fantastic score.
I love City. I would love to see a production of that somewhere. And then the week after, for Billy's birthday, we ended up singing a duet of Cheek to Cheek, which was so amazing to be singing with Billy Stritch. And, you know, he's playing piano. And it's interesting because he and I have very different jazz sensibilities. But when we sang together, it sounded so good because just, you know, our harmony, like it just complemented each other really well. So I love Birdland. A recent discovery is the Sugar Bar on 72nd between Broadway and West End, which is it's called Ashford and Simpson's Sugar Bar. Ashford and Simpson being the people who wrote Ain't No Mountain High Enough, who wrote You're All I Need to Get By. I mean, they're like, and Valerie Simpson is there hosting the Sugar Bar every Thursday. And I have gone the past 2 Thursdays and just that's like an R&B jam, and it's amazing. I mean, I've never really been to church, but because I'm Jewish, but like I was like, I'm at church right now, like full on. It was amazing. So I'll keep going to that too. Yeah.
So you kind of made it clear you're not a native New Yorker. You showed up in New York just in time for everything to shut down. But it sounds like your original idea was you were going to try to get yourself on Broadway.
Yes.
Musical theater background. Is that still a goal of yours? Is that still something you aspire toward, is to see yourself on a Broadway stage at some point?
Yeah, I would love to have the experience of, you know, being in one of those huge theaters and, you know, having a cast. I mean, you know, a cast like I mean, I have my band with me, but it's usually just me on stage. I mean, it would be so fun to be a part of an ensemble and to tell a story. I mean, one of my favorite performance experiences I've had was seeing Strange Loop this year, A Strange Loop on Broadway. It was such an amazing story and great music. And if I were fortunate enough to be able to be a part of a story like that, like I would absolutely do that. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of like Broadway or bust for a while. And then like when Broadway closed, I was kind of challenged to think outside the box because I wanted to keep performing. I didn't want to just wait for things to open up. And I kind of found in this different path, like more freedom and also just, I mean, with Broadway, it's like you do the same show 8 times a week, which is wonderful. And that's like such an art form and a craft in itself. But I love being able to do completely different things, like, you know, maybe even not 8 like as many times as I can a week.
Yeah.
I feel like, did I answer your question? I guess I did.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, this is fantastic. You're taking this in all kinds of great directions that I love. This is a business that you're in, and I'm going to refer to it as a business. This entertainment industry, it's competitive. I mean, you've already
Yes.
addressed that to a great degree. It can even be described as cutthroat in a lot of ways, and particularly when it's one thing to say, "Well, I'm a big fish in a small pond." You put yourself in a city or a town where there is not as much competition. You can't get much more competitive and cutthroat than New York, than Manhattan. And you come across as a very positive and upbeat person. How do you maintain that in the midst? You've addressed that a little bit in talking about how you move forward when COVID hit, but what do you see about yourself as being a quality that helps you stay upbeat and motivated in the midst of an industry, in the midst of trying to stay ahead of ahead of the curve in this entertainment industry?
That's a great question. So I guess I would break down my answer to that question two categories. One being like nature, like who I am, and one being nurture, as far as like my experiences and the way that I go about navigating this industry. Nature wise, I've always been super competitive. Like as a kid, when we'd be at an event like I don't know, a magic show, and they would call up a volunteer from the audience. If I didn't get chosen, I would cry. Like like so much so that my parents had to like vet out the venues before we went so that they could make sure I wouldn't
Yeah.
cry. So so that's kind of funny. And so I guess I've always, I've continued to be that person. But then, I mean, going to Michigan honestly was very formative as far as shaping my mindset to be healthy in entering into a competitive field, because I was a small fish in a,
Mhm.
I mean, it's not a huge school, but everyone there is so amazing. It felt like a big pond.
Yeah.
And something that the former head of my theater program always used to say was, you can't move forward if you're looking to the sides, meaning you have to focus on what you're doing. And if
Yeah.
you're like, comparing yourself, or if you're, like just thinking about like, oh, they're doing something and I'm not, or you're not going to actually do what you're supposed to be doing. And so that was like a really big journey for me to, and I'm still on that. I mean, I'm never going to stop
Right.
continuing to refine. But it's like, hmm, I mean, especially now with all this social media where everybody is posting all the time, everything that they're doing, it, I just have had to adopt a mindset of like, it's a mindset of abundance in the sense of somebody else can be succeeding and I can be succeeding. And just because they're
Yes.
succeeding doesn't mean that I'm doing any worse. And also like, yeah, to really look at like I've had so many of my classmates actually from Michigan, like kind of in an unheard of way, have gone on to Broadway and national tours like right
Mhm.
after graduating. And that is incredible. Like
Mhm.
to see that. And even though I didn't do that, it doesn't mean that my path of, performing all over New York is any less or any less of an achievement. And
Yes.
it's also, you can't even compare. Like getting on Broadway and singing with Billy Stritch on the stage of Birdland are two incredible achievements that there's no like they're both, there's no comparison.
That's right.
um so I'm just really grateful to be where I am, and I'm also really grateful to have gone to school and to be surrounded by so many people that do incredible things. It's inspires me to be better, like to continue to achieve. And it also I just, it's so cool, like damn, like I have many friends that are on Broadway. Like I
Yeah.
mean, I once dreamed about living in New York, and I once, had starry eyes looking at the people on Broadway and, in performing all over the city. And now I am one of those people performing, and I
That's right.
know so many of those people. So
You're
that's
you're
all.
living the dream.
Yeah.
You're actually living the
Yeah.
dream. I love that. I love that advice of not looking sideways.
Yes.
We spend so much time, I think, trying to compare ourselves to other people, or it's not a bad idea to sometimes look in the rear view mirror and remind yourself what you came from, but you also have to be looking ahead. If you're driving down the road and all you're doing is staring at the rear view mirror, you're going to rear end somebody at some point.
Yes.
And we got to keep our sights on what's ahead of us. And I love your positive attitude. And all of this is great advice, and I know this is going to resonate with a lot of people, so that's perfect. You describe your style, and you shared already some of this, all the different styles of music. And there would be some people who would say that, your appreciation of the older styles of music, the jazz, the big band, even the 60s, 70s, pop, and that kind of thing, is possibly as a performer unusual for someone from your generation. What and who are your influences in music?
Ooh, I love talking about my music because I mean I think music is probably at this point in my life my greatest love. Like there is so much power, there is so much storytelling, so much feeling. So I feel so much spirituality in music. So I love talking about this. Well, I guess to answer your question about like how, or your comment about how I kind of have like an older sensibility. I mean, my parents shaped a lot of my music taste. My dad, I went to a school when I was younger that was kind of like a bit of a drive, like 45 minutes there and back. So he would drive me to school and we would he gave me like a full music education on many earlier eras. He gave me a full Beatles. I mean, I know so many Beatles songs because of that. He, some musicals like Les Mis we listened to a lot, and I mean he was really into like theme songs from the 60s and 70s too, so I know like a lot of those songs, which is like an interesting skill. And my dad is also really into like ragtime, so I was
Nice.
listening to
Wow.
that. And then my mom always loved James Taylor. She loved Alicia Keys. And we listened to Enya. Like there is just a lot of
Wow.
kind of
Eclectic
varied.
styles, but you're getting that. Yeah. You
Yeah.
mentioned something. We used to play a game with my kids in the car. I grew up with a dad who, of course, came from the era where a lot of the big band and the jazz and we always listened to music growing up. And when my kids were growing up, one of the games we used to play in the car was we'd put on the oldies, what they would call the music of your life station, which was a lot of the music from the 40s, 50s. And I would play a game with my kids where I would give them choices like, okay, is that who's singing right now? Is it Frank Sinatra? Is it Tony Bennett? And they would have to get used to the voices enough and the styles that after a while they go, oh yeah, that's Tony Bennett singing right there. Oh yeah, that's Ella Fitzgerald, So I can appreciate the kind of stuff that your parents were doing as you were growing up.
That's great. I mean, it's so important to know the people that built the foundation for what we have
Right.
today, you know? Um, but as far as my greatest musical influences, my big three, as I like to call it, are Joni Mitchell, Amy Winehouse, and Erykah Badu, which are
Wow.
honestly from three very different eras.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that though.
Yeah.
I can see all of that in your style and stylistic approach to music and the things that I've seen and heard from you. I can see a little bit of all of those at different times in the ways that you perform.
Yeah. Joni, to me, Joni is the reason that I started falling in love with music. I
Okay.
heard "Help Me," and I listened to it, and then I listened to it again, and then I listened to it 5 more times, and I was like, "This is an amazing." I was like, "Who is this?" And this was actually not really until like my junior year of high school. I was like 16 years old, so it was kind of later, I guess, in the scheme
Uh-huh.
of my journey, my musical journey. I Joni's lyrics are incomparable, and the harmonies so unique. And I'm actually seeing her in concert in June on the West Coast, which I'm so excited for.
Wow.
Yeah. So I love Joni. Erykah Badu, I think we'll talk about this later, I guess. The music that I'm creating now, she is the most direct. Her voice is in my ear as far as the sounds she creates. I think her first album, Baduism, which came out in 1997, which was also the year I was born. I think that album is like a perfect album. Every single song is incredible. I think she tells stories so honestly. I think she's like super weird in like the best way possible, and I just love listening to her music. And I really want to emulate her kind of, I don't want to say je ne sais quoi, but like just some kind of, like there's something ethereal to what she creates. And then Amy Winehouse, as far as like persona, I mean, not necessarily persona, but like kind of, I mean, she was a Jewish jazz R&B singer.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I do. And I mean, she wrote so many amazing songs, and I just have so much respect for her artistry, and I also so much sadness for her story. So yeah, I love those three, but there's so many more, but like those are my girls, I would say.
And like Amy Winehouse, you also write your own music. I mean, you perform a lot of cover music, but you're writing your own music too.
Yes.
So, and let's talk about a couple of things with that, some of those things in mind. You got some things coming up. In fact, talk about Amy Winehouse. You got a show coming up in just a couple of weeks.
Yes.
That is the Soul of Amy Winehouse. It's an Amy Winehouse tribute show that you're doing on stage at the Chelsea Table and Stage in New York.
Yes.
On March 2nd.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that? And one of the cool things I'm going to mention, and we'll be showing this during the show. I'll have this up there. But where people can go to get tickets. One of the cool things about this is if you're in New York on the 2nd, you can go and see this live. And if you're not in New York, because I'm fortunately not going to be in New York in a couple of weeks, but it's also live streaming, and you can buy tickets to watch the live stream of the show. So do you want to talk a little bit about, without giving too much away, because we want people to go to it to find out what it's really about, but a little bit about what that show will entail.
So the inspiration for the show came because this year would have been Amy Winehouse's 40th birthday, and that's a big year. And I just like kind of took a deep dive. People told me for years, listen to Amy Winehouse, and I was like, okay, I know Rehab, I know Valerie, like I get it. But last year I really started listening to like from her first album, Frank, which is also an amazing album. And I was just like, wow, she's incredible. And actually, like Spotify does those Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year. Like Amy Winehouse was like my number one listen to last year because I just couldn't stop with her first album, especially. And then she has her third album, which is kind of like a posthumous release of songs that she was working on. Some amazing tracks on that. So I wanted to honor Amy Winehouse in a way that I had never seen before. I mean, you know, kind of the narrative of Amy Winehouse up to this point is like, you know, you see clips of her on YouTube, her stuff is on Spotify, and then this huge slew of terrible media coverage about her drug use and how she died at 27 and how, you know, it's just such a terrible picture has been painted of her. And in most people, even when I've been telling people that I'm doing this Amy Winehouse show, some people will look at me like, oh, well, you know, don't start doing heroin. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm not gonna do heroin. And also that's not who she was.
No.
You know?
That's right.
She was an incredible artist, not just singer. She wrote so many of her songs and also just an amazing human. Like in all of the interviews, she was so honest. She was so lovely. I really want to, for her, the year of her, what would have been her 40th birthday, I want to honor her in a way that I feel she deserves to be honored. So what I've done with this show is I put together a band of piano, bass, drums, and then also sax and trumpet. So
nice.
Some brass. Okay. Yeah. And I picked what I feel are her best songs from all three of her albums. So you'll hear the heavy hitters, but also some kind of unknown. I mean, her third album was, I think it's called Lioness Hidden Treasures. And I feel like I've kind of selected some of those songs. And I'm putting together a story of kind of rewriting the narrative of who she was. And also, I like that. Because I feel so similar to her soul-wise, weaving my own story into what she's doing and kind of, in a way, attempting to continue her legacy through what I do, I guess, starting with this show.
I'm looking forward to being there. You can be confident that I will be in the live stream audience on the 2nd, and having that opportunity to watch and listen to you perform once again. You got other things, you got other projects going on, and I know one of them is kind of a long-term project, is an album that you're working on. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So it's interesting because I've always like written little hooks, small songs, like since kind of midway through college. I wrote a few musicals in college, but they were very small scale, and like, and actually in the pandemic, I wrote a musical called Dating 2020, about dating in 2020, which is actually on YouTube.
Oh, okay, I'm going to find that one. I haven't seen that one yet.
That was a really fun project to do, and also kind of it made the time go by a little faster that year, 2020, because I actually wrote that in real time. Like, I wrote about the events of the year, including like the Black Lives Matter movement, and then about the election, because that was a huge election when Joe Biden was elected. And that was a great project. But anyway, I've always really considered myself more of a performer. And all last year, when I was gigging all throughout the city, I had this thought of, what if I tried putting out my original music in a way that was not in a musical, and just kind of as me, as perhaps a singer-songwriter, kind of like Amy Winehouse. I've had a lot of challenging romantic relationships up to this point. I guess that's a way to put it. And in the darkest moments and in the most emotional moments, I would go to the piano and I would write. Especially in 2022, I wrote a lot. And I kind of always viewed it as sort of a musical journal. I never thought I would necessarily put these songs out. But then I thought, what if I just tried, like, weaving these songs together, putting together something, and then presenting it. And so what I did at the end of last year was I created a concept album of all the songs I wrote in 2022 about challenging romance. That's not what it really is, but it's a nice way to say it, I guess. Yeah. And I did a live concept album at Rockwood Music Hall with I played piano and sang. I had a bass and drums and 2 backup singers, and people actually really resonated in a way that I did not expect. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna like put this up, and people are gonna be like, oh, like, pat me on the head, that's so nice, Isabel, that you put out your music, but like, that's just for you. But no, people really resonated, which then made me think that actually doing this path of being a singer-songwriter could be in a way like an act of service for people, processing my own emotions and experiences and putting them into music that then can help people process their own emotions and experiences. And so since then, I've been pursuing this singer-songwriter path, which is very different from musical theater, and it's also different from being a gig singer. So I have a concept album. It's about 13 songs, and it goes continuously from front to back. It's not like individual songs. Like, it's a concept album in the sense that I firmly believe that the body of work is greater than any of the songs. Like, like some of the songs, like they're also, that's my kitchen over there. Actually, it's really a kitchenette. Just acknowledging that.
Typical New York apartment.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. But there are individual songs on it, and it's an R&B jazz album. So there are songs that, I performed one of the songs at Birdland with the trio, and then I also performed one of the songs at the Sugar Bar with the R&B band. Like, it's the whole continuum. And where I'm at right now is I'm attracting the team that'll help me put this together. I am currently recording a music video for one of the songs.
Oh, nice.
So yes, so that song was professionally recorded, and then in a studio with an amazing audio engineer and band. And then I actually, right before the Amy Winehouse show, I'll be filming the music video with actually a Hungarian filmmaker who's very well known in Hungary. He came to my Rockwood show and wanted to do the video. So yeah, and then after that, we'll see what the next step will be. There's a few key team members that I think are still out there that I need to bring into the scope at the right time.
Well, we'll be keeping track of that and make sure that we get the word out when your album's available so people can know how to get a hold of that. You, one of the things I have to ask, because I know it's going to come up in the comments as people are watching this, on your resume on Backstage, it mentions you're not only multi-genre, you're multilingual. You speak more than just English. You speak a couple of other languages, don't you?
Yes, 我会说中文
Aha,
and
yeah.
yo hablo español.
You speak Spanish, you speak, and I know one of our viewers who actually already reached out to me about this was very curious about your Chinese linguistic abilities, which dialect of Chinese that is, and why and how that came about and how it factors into other things that you do. Can you take just a moment to maybe talk about that?
I mean, listen, I love that a skill that I worked on for so many years is like coming to light. I never thought I would use, Chinese. I mean, well, I mean, I thought I would use it, but I mean, as a singer, I didn't know that this would be a question in an interview about my performance. It's great. I started studying Chinese like in fourth grade, and I just loved it. It's a very musical language with the tones, so I resonated with that. I studied it in throughout high school. I studied it in college. I studied the speaking and the writing.
And which dialect is it that you speak and write?
I just do Mandarin. And simplified. Okay, Traditional is next level. I mean, when I applied to colleges, I did musical theater schools, but when I was applying to academic schools like Harvard, I applied as an East Asian Studies major because I feel that, I mean, for me, so much of, I guess one of my life themes is like communication through music. And, when it comes to communication with other people, Spanish and Chinese are the two other most widely spoken languages in the world. So, I thought if I could be fluent in Spanish and Chinese and English, I could communicate with so many people. So that's why I studied Chinese for so long. And I still use it I meet Mandarin speakers all the time, and they're always so shocked when I speak Chinese because I am not Chinese. So yeah,
that's fun. Great. Well, good. I appreciate you. In just the few minutes we have left, I want to address a couple of additional things. One is, with your, you've already talked about this, I believe, a little bit, in just talking about what you were taught and influenced, but what is your advice to other people who might be looking to pursue a similar career and knowing the obstacles and the challenges that are faced in doing that? Do you have any advice that you would pass along to others about how best to approach doing this?
Yeah, I mean, something else I do, I teach voice students. I have a studio and of all different ages and all different experiences. And it's so hard to give like a broad stroke answer because everybody has such an individual path. So I guess with that, I would say, if you feel that you have a creative, you want to pursue a creative path, I would say, figure out how, get really specific with what you do that is amazing, and find your niche. And I say this because I think, there's this perception that in order to be like a creative, especially there's so many BFA programs out there, which is great. But I think, the misconception is, a lot of people go to these BFA programs and then they become, I mean, my mindset for a while was Broadway or bust. But there's so many pathways to have a creative career that I think the most important thing is to figure out what do you do well? Like if being on stage and performing somebody else's words and singing somebody else's songs with an ensemble and dancing and doing, I guess, accents to play characters is that's checks off everything that is your best, then yeah, go for the Broadway, absolutely. But if you are just more of a singer and you just love music and Broadway is part of that, there are hundreds of careers in being a musician. You can be a session musician. You can sing backup for great artists in Los Angeles. You can do voiceover singing work. You can do jingles. I mean, and these are just the ones that I'm aware of. Also, if you really love creating, if you love writing, it doesn't mean you have to write a musical that goes to Broadway. Writing is there's so much writing around us we don't even realize. I mean, when we're scrolling on social media and we're looking at, advertisements, somebody writes those little one line hooks that then make you click on the article. Like, you could do
Mhm.
something like that, or you can write. I mean, one of my friends she reviews for theater in the city. That's so
Hmm.
cool. You
Yeah.
can, I mean, I don't have an awareness of every single path that's involved with creativity, and even doing something like marketing is a very creative career.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to, and also, if you get a BFA and you end up not, like performing on stage, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. I think the success is in finding out who you are and then curating your life to fit that person that you are. That's a success,
Yeah.
and so it's not about, checking off the box of, like, what a lot of people think is the cool thing to do. Also, I mean, TikTok is like a huge career path for a lot of people. I have a lot of
It
friends who
is
like
now.
do that, and that's very creative. But it's not about, like, fitting the mold. It's about fitting your mold and having the
I
world
like that.
follow. And
I
then,
like that.
because, Broadway career isn't for everyone. I mean, honestly, I'll say this. I know some people that are on Broadway that are very unhappy with
Hmm.
that, because it's a
Hmm.
hard life.
Hmm.
And, but they love it, but it's still a hard life, and everything is going to be hard. Like, there's always difficulty to things. So, yeah, it's all about finding your fit. And I'm
I like
still,
that.
on that path. I hope that is
That
helpful.
no, that's great. And I think, again, I think that's great advice from someone who's living it, and you got a real world perspective. I just want to finish by mentioning something that is on your website, and we're going to put your website up here. I'm also going to
Yay.
make it available on my pages so people can find out more about you. That also provides links to where you're performing and when you're performing, what's going on. The final line on your bio says something that to me is a key. And it says that your goal in life is to use your voice to connect the world and open as many hearts as possible. Can you just take a moment to talk about that goal in life and what that means to you as we finish
First,
up here?
I'm really grateful that you like checked out all my stuff. That's cool, that because I put out all this stuff and I'm like, no one's ever going to see this, but like, you saw it, so that's cool. Um, so yeah, connect the world and open hearts. I think, um, you know, this pandemic time, this era that we're in, exposed how broken this world still is, and like maybe even more so than it's ever been before. And we're not here for none of us are here forever. And I just feel, and I think this comes from my Jewish background of, there's a concept in Judaism called tikkun olam, which means repairing the world. And I think I just feel it's important to, in whatever time I have here, to figure out how I can contribute to that repairing the world. Um, and music is, I mean, everyone talks about how powerful music is. And it is, I mean, honestly, to see when I performed my original music and to see how people, especially the women in the audience, really felt, I feel kind of seen by the brokenness that I showed through song, and how, I mean, I even had some friends that kind of their relationships shifted after that show, and the relationships that weren't really working for them. And I mean, for this particular album, I guess what the repairing I'm attempting to, um, manifest is like people that are in toxic relationships, especially women that are in toxic relationships, like knowing that they deserve better. They definitely deserve better. There is no person who deserves a toxic relationship. Um, and yeah, I guess I just feel in whatever way I can, and however, whatever opportunities come my way, and whatever shows I am fortunate enough to do, and whatever music I'm fortunate enough to release, that if there's any way that, in addition to being able to just do that, the other part of doing it is having it be received, and helping people, get through what they're getting through, or feel joy. Even that's something that helps often. And then, in addition to, all the music stuff, I would love to be able to just one day have a platform and a place to be able to directly help people that are really in need, like people that are homeless, or people that are, you know, I mean, actually, homelessness is to me the biggest issue in our world. And yeah, I feel like I've gone a bit on a tangent, but I just want to do a little bit to make this world just a little bit better after I'm not here anymore. That's all I really want to do.
Well, thank you for what you do. And Izze Stein, thank you again for sharing your talent. Thank you for sharing some time with us today. We're going to continue to look for you in various venues around New York and ultimately, I think, around the world. So thanks, and just continue to do what you do to make a difference. All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Good. I'm glad. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. It was special, and we went. Izzy and I went a little bit longer than usual, but there was no way I was going to edit anything out of that. Don't go away quite yet, because I'm going to share a few more things with you. I'm going to share where you can find Izzy. I'm going to be putting the links to all of her sites in the chat as I share some things here, and just so keep an eye here for just a minute. This is where you can find Izzy's website, and that's the link. You're also going to see these links in the chat, and they're going to be on the Coffee Breaks page in very soon. But you also, this is on her page. If you go to where the shows are, you will see every place that she is currently scheduled to perform in New York and in other places on there, including, you'll see up in the upper left-hand corner there, the Amy Winehouse tribute show. And if you go to the Chelsea Table and Stage site, which is in the links that I shared, you will also, and I think some of those links may have kind of run together in the chat, but we'll provide them as well on the web or on my Facebook page so you can see them. But you'll see that you can either buy tickets for live or for the live stream for the Amy Winehouse, Soul of Amy Winehouse tribute show that Izzy's doing. She also has a YouTube page that you can go to and see all of the videos that she has up there and watch and listen to her perform remotely if you're not yet able to go and see her live somewhere. And then she also, we mentioned in the introduction that she is a singer for Let Me Write Your Song. And so here is the website for that, for Scott Allen's site that provides customized songs for different situations. So I hope you'll take advantage. Once again, I'll make sure that all of Izzy's information is properly in the chat. I do want to let you know what's coming up next week before we go. I know we're running a little bit long today, but next week, Moni Knopp, a very fascinating person, is going to be joining me to talk about giving back. A person who, a great civic leader who was born in the killing fields of Cambodia and came to the United States under very difficult circumstances, has really risen to be very successful, not only in his career, but in giving back. So I want to make sure that that you're tuned in next week for that. If you have topics that you would like to see us discuss or guests that you would like to see, you can email and share your ideas. You know the email address, cbwsteve@comcast.net, and let us know about those as well. And just a reminder that we also have podcasts of all of our episodes that show up on Spotify, both video and audio, and then the audio on Apple and Google Podcasts. So don't forget to look those up. All right. Hey, this has been a great day. I once again just want to say a huge thank you to Izze Stein for being our guest today, my new friend Izzy. And I'm looking forward to the concert on the 2nd, the Amy Winehouse concert. Also looking forward to being back in New York later this year as our current plan, and getting a chance to once again see Izzy perform. So listen, as we've already talked about here, that there's so many different ways. Izzy talked about it, so many different ways that we can make a difference, so many different ways that we can look at the things in our lives that are important and that we want to not only make happen now, but can be part of our legacy, can live long beyond us. So I just encourage you, as I do every single week, to not only take care of yourself. That's first and foremost. You got to have good self-care. You got to have the margins in your own life, but also just a reminder to please find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you. Have a great week.